Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jason. Welcome to today's live stream. You're here. You made it. This is the place to be. I got my main man Chance in the on deck circle, and we have a super good show planned for you tonight. We'll kick things off with a little analog versus digital discussion because we can never get enough of that. And then we'll jump into a discussion about the gold mine grading standards. And we'll parlay that into a little show and tell session. And then we'll end the night by spinning the wheel of fate to see who wins the 1,000 subscriber giveaways once and for all. And don't forget, there are actually 3 drawings because I'm also tossing in a Sun Ra record. And all told, we'll only take about an hour of your time, so it should be really fun. Let's jump right in. Chance, what's up, baby? How you doing, man?
Good. What's going on?
Not too much. We have some slight technical difficulties. Not that you need to know this, but Chance cannot actually see me tonight, so I'm staring at
that John Cena. Getting that John Cena. I'm ready, man.
It's better than the church lady you had before. So
this is true. This is true. Guessing. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks for joining me, dude. I really appreciate it.
Happy to.
Yeah, so we're going to try to keep a tight ship today, and so we will jump into to the first discussion. I want to just tee it up a little bit. I already sort of had the idea to. It's never. You can never talk about digital versus analog too much, in my opinion. And there's always new things coming up and new little gems that come up and stuff like that. And so I was watching a stream actually. It's old, but I just caught the video of it. It's about a year old almost, and it was Michael 45, and he had Bernie Grunman, he had Brian on there, he had Chad Chasm on there, and so it was really cool. And there was some serious knowledge dropped on that video, and it sort of just kind of reinvigorated my, desire to kind of talk about this tonight. So I asked Mr. Concert Buddy himself to share some records that he has that are, these are records I think could potentially be considered controversial, particularly in the all analog space. And I know he's got a huge collection of MoFis and UHQRs and stuff like that. So I think that would be really fun to kind of get into some of that stuff. Some of the stuff that Bernie was talking about was really, Bernie Grumman, of course, engineer of some of our favorite records, was getting into like, DSD, which is a technology that, digital technology that MoFi is using, and, some of the difficulties with working with DSD files and why it's important to work with analog files and just EQing and storing music files and all this stuff, transferring files and everything. So it was really cool. I'll link that. I meant to link it before the show, but I'll link that live stream in the show notes, and then you guys can take a look at it if you want to. But one of the things I thought was really interesting that'll kind of kick this off is somebody left a comment, a chat message in that video, and it never really got answered. And it was to paraphrase it, it was kind of like, is mastering that uses DSD as a transfer method, can it be heard under normal home stereo listening conditions? And he says, like, we still really haven't got an answer on that. And it was like a great forum to ask that question, but for some reason the answer got skipped. But they say, why do you think no one heard DSD on MoFi? Especially since there were such objections to using it when mastering these records. So anyway, I kind of want to just set the stage a little bit and to some degree kind of pass it off to Chance, because I think he's got some great records here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chance, but I'm pretty sure you have some cool records here.
So 2 things. I'm going to quote William Dafoe in Spider-Man 1. I'm kind of a scientist myself. But I've been telling you, like, I've been moving, so a lot of my records are kind of packed up. So, but I think I've got some good examples, because I think at the end of the day, the digital versus analog arm wrestling match, I think the mastering is the most important part, because and I'm sure you can attest to this, there are some records that clearly from digital based on, you know, they were made in the 90s. I'm thinking of like something like even as recent as the Cake Fashion Nugget reissue that came out within the last year. Clearly digital source, but the key is mastered for vinyl. I think that's kind of something that gets lost in the sauce. But one record that seems to be talked about a lot, but it continues to escalate in price is the 1988 Tracy Chapman self-titled record, and
Okay.
this, from all indications, was digital. But this sounds super good, super good, super good. So then becomes a question: well, how can it sound so good if it wasn't all analog? Well, there are records that were all analog that sound like not good, right? And again, the key is the mastering. It's the chains. It's the chain from the tapes. It's from the source to, you know. And there's also other things in the chain that kind of get not really talked about. Like if you think about, you know, the multiple steps in the chain to cut the lacquers to all that kind of stuff. I mean, think about something like, I'm sure you've heard of DMM, direct metal
Mm-hmm.
masterings. So
Yep.
that's something that, you know, they've cut out a couple steps in the chain to go basically from source to these metal plates and so on and so forth. So you talked about MoFi, and obviously we're not going to
So,
relive.
just real
Oh,
quick,
good.
I know this again. I appreciate you bearing with me since you can't really see me here. By the way, I was nodding my head vigorously earlier
Oh,
when you were
no
talking about.
doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
But one, and so just because you touched on it, and is do you think one of the things that Bernie was talking about was it's so much easier to perform edits on a tape than on a digital file. He was like, digital file to trying to edit a DSD is impossible. And so that was one of the takeaways for me that was really, really interesting. So, and then I started doing some more research, and of course, not all master tapes are created equally. Some of them are pre-EQ'd. In that case, I mean, you don't even have to edit it. You just do a direct transfer. It seems to me, I don't know how much you have on the background on how some of these ones you're going to show were actually mastered and, the state of the tapes before they transfer them and stuff like that. But I just want to point that out to the listeners because I thought that was something that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think, you know, one thing about and I forget when that conversation probably took place somewhere in the MoFi Gate, you know, hot and heavy conversation last year. State of tapes is very important. I mean, you're hearing it even now talking about the John Coltrane UHQR that just dropped from Acoustic Sounds because, you know, we're conditioned to think that it had to be from the original master tapes. Well, in that case, the original master tapes are pretty rough.
Yeah.
And by Acoustic Sound's own admission, this was mastered by Ryan K. Smith from first copy tapes that were over in the UK, because in their assessment, these were the best tapes that they could get their hands on, right? So again,
Yep.
you know, not to bore people with this stuff, but every step you get away from the original, there is a loss of something, right? Like fidelity, et cetera, et cetera. Still doesn't mean it still means it can still sound great, but it's just like if you think of a copy of a copy of a copy, if you go back to, I'm dating myself here, but making cassette copies, cassette tape
Oh
copies, right?
yeah.
Back in the day in the boombox, you know, A to B's. Every time you made a copy, there was still a little loss of something. So anyway, UHQR, current topic, etc. But back to the MoFi stuff, you know, that was like the big reveal. DSD. I don't even think it was part of normal conversation in the vinyl community until MoFi Gate happened.
Yeah.
And then there was nuances to it because, you know, the assessment, or at least the loose explanation from the MoFi people was, yeah, we did use the analog tapes, but they're in varying degrees of condition. And, you know, like one thing that I'll kind of get back to that in a second is like what MoFi did on these Miles Davis. Like I have virtually all the Miles Davis MoFis. Sound great. And if MoFi Gate hadn't happened and, you know, there not being confusion about what original master recording means and all that stuff, no one would have known. And again, none the wiser. Does that mean that the day after I learned about this, that sounded worse? No, it doesn't, right?
Mm.
But still, there's varying degrees of the DSD because they took the original tapes, they used whatever their patented technology is. Because a lot of this too, you have to remember, is these tapes and accessibility. Not the condition is important, but accessibility too, because a lot of the labels are very proprietary about how they issue. They'll make the deal for the license, but then oftentimes you have, not you, but Mobile Fidelity or whoever is going to do the reissuing has to go to wherever Sony says or wherever, you know, whoever controls the tapes. So you have to think that whatever technology they're using has to be mobile, agile,
Yep. Yep.
flexible, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so DSD is interesting because then there's varying degrees of DSD transfer. There's, 64, 125. There's all these numbers, right? Again, not a scientist, but if you, again, I go back to, and I borrow this from Norman Maslow. He made the really good point that did the records sound any different the day after the big reveal? And the answer is no. Now, some people kind of let the quote deception of the whole situation kind of ruin their appetite and their impression of the brand, and that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of the actual how they were mastered and how they sound, invariably didn't change. But again, we're caught up in a lot of this marketing jargon too, and maybe we'll touch on that in a little bit. But AAA, all analog. It's really a lot of word salad about how these titles are marketed, because
Yep.
in a lot of cases they put a hype sticker on there and it says from the original tapes. Okay, loose interpretation. I mean, a lot of people automatically go, "Oh, great, this has got to be all analog. It's from the tapes." Not so fast, right? Conversely, you have other things, just like I said in that cake example, mastered for vinyl. Clearly a digital source, because a lot of those recordings in the late 80s, like Tracy Chapman, 90s, early 2000s, were digital. So you have to be very nuanced to read between the lines, but also not afraid to do your own research too, because a lot of these brands are conveniently not saying, some are smart, and we can get into the disclosure piece, because Neil Young and a lot of people who are like pro analog have been advocating for there should be a universal coding system, or however you want to advertise the recording sourcing to the mass public, but still hasn't really got off the ground. They've talked about the star system, they've talked about certain vernacular, etc. But again, it's like anything else. If you're getting an entire industry, labels, mastering people, all these people to agree on a consensus, and we'll get into the gold mine and the grading. That's a whole nother thing. Look how challenging that is to get a one common source of truth. Good luck.
I think it's interesting too what you say about like the jargon in terms of 3A and all of that stuff, the marketing speech, which works. I mean, so they kind of tell people what they want to hear to a degree. I mean, they at some point they figured out like people are knowledgeable in this community almost more than any other. Like people know their stuff and they know what they want, and when they see 3A, they're more willing to certain buyers are more willing to pull the trigger. So it's crazy. They used it both ways. It's kind of like this jargon works, but on the other hand, because it works, if you manipulate it, now there's a real problem. And to me, like the more I kind of think about that aspect of it, the more I realize like, okay, they knew what they were doing. They realize how important it is to people that every letter and how they describe how these records are made is important to people. And so you mince any of those words, and what happened. And Adam chimed in a few times too about he's been able to snag a lot of the Miles Davis MoFis because of MoFi Gate. I was kind of wondering about that when it first happened. Like, is this stuff going to start getting more reasonable? Because for a lot of people, I think MoFi, UHQR as well, like a lot of these audiophile pressings are like, sort of out of reach, especially when there's other options. I think a lot of people, and to be honest, I'm sort of one of these people that's kind of like good enough is kind of good enough. Like, at what point do I say I can spend $300, $400, $500 on a record? And, it's just not the kind of collector I am. Again, not here or there, but it's just interesting. And that stuff has come down now. Maybe more people it's more accessible to more people now.
Well, I think you have to look at it a couple different ways. One is, and Adam makes a good point. The titles became more available after that news. True story. There were titles, and I wish I would have been a little bit more cannibalistic, because there were some titles I had been watching that plummeted in price, and I was still kind of figuring out like where I stood like on the actual Mobile Fidelity brand as a whole, because I had a lot of pre-orders, like these One Steps and the Van Halen stuff. And that's a whole nother topic about these extended lead times and their brand. But, I coincidentally went in and trimmed that order down, like, and not because I was mad, because I'm like, okay, now I know this new information. Like you take some of their jazz titles that they had advertised Okay, well, if I know that somebody like Chad at Acoustic Sounds and they stand by using the tapes again, is it first generation or whatever? They're using tapes. Like they are on that hill, Chad's out in front saying we use
Yep.
tapes. If it's a jazz title or something like that, I think I'm going to go that way. I mean, because there's been times that Mobile Fidelity and Acoustic Sounds have done the same title. Think about some of the Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff. Consensus seems to be that you give it to Chad because Chad used the tapes. Whereas, like, in side note, I'm filling out my Mobile Fidelity paperwork kind of this weekend, and those are the titles I'm going through. And knowing that, I have a saying like with these, especially these audiophile specific titles, premium price, and for a premium product, it comes with a premium expectation. And again,
Yep.
I'm not trying to legislate the
Absolutely.
UHQR box versus the one-step box. That's a whole nother conversation. But if you're talking about the Stevie Ray Vaughan Can't Stand the Weather that was one step, or done Chad or whoever else did it, there's a price difference about $80, that is a considerable consideration, right? And
Yep.
when these one steps fall flat, it's kind of disappointing. Anyway, so yeah,
Well, so
so I
let me
did
ask
trim
you
my
this.
order, but
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. If
ribbit,
to
we're good.
to jump in is, and one of the things, and you just made me think of something else that came up in that great discussion that Bernie had, is certain kinds of music can suffer more from like digital. And one of the things he brought up was like very acoustic records, like jazz.
Mm.
Like classical and stuff like that. And so I don't know if some of these later records that have a lot more, electric and distortion that's already naturally in the music are maybe a little safer bets when you're going like digital and DSD. I wonder, since you said you're being very selective now, is that something that you've thought about too? Like you maybe only going with certain kinds of music, just sticking to analog with that kind of stuff, like jazz and so on.
I mean, the jazz is interesting topic only in the sense that part of the mystique of those recordings is hearing the imperfections, really in any kind of recording, right? Like
Right.
the thing about digital that I think is really interesting is that, and Neil Young talks about this too, is how perfect do you want it to sound? Because music's an imperfect art. And
Exactly. Yep.
exactly. If you want to have the machines make all the music and all that stuff, okay, but you do want to hear some of those little hiccups, because sometimes when they do these takes, sometimes some of the magic comes from a mistake
Yep.
or a freestyle or improvisation,
Or
right?
some
Especially
weird
jazz.
harmonic that comes out of these very variety of frequencies that maybe aren't picked up in DSD or
Yeah, I mean,
digital.
and think about, like, so going back to the UHQR Coltrane that like seems to be making the rounds in the vinyl community about just how much separation there is in the instruments and all that stuff, and it's great, but is it too perfect? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And again, I mean, this is a first world conversation. Like, oh,
Yeah,
is
for
it too
sure.
perfect
Yeah.
sounding? You know what I
Well,
mean? But
so what about? I'm sorry. And I know we're running over a little bit. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your
oh, of
time. You let me know when you're
course.
ready to jump. But it does make me think, and we can wrap up with this if you want.
Hmm?
Is what about the MJ Thriller 40th anniversary? Did you happen to snag that? Because that was one of the things I heard about. That was that it's just too separate, too perfect.
Yeah, I mean, perfect topic, because that's what launched MoFi Gate. Because they're like, how can you take
Yeah.
the original tapes and because I think it's a stamper is good for 10,000 pressings or whatever, and they're like, this is a anyway. That was the thread that started pulling off the sweater, but I did not pick it up, and namely because I was a little concerned coming out of this how they were going to handle it. And I know Mike Esposito from the In Groove went out to Sebastopol or whatever that place is in California where they do the mastering and that, and he said it sounded good in the demos he heard, etc. But I wanted to hear more of a consensus. I wanted to lean into the community on this piece because that's a dance record. And
Yep.
Bernie, literally the first pressing Bernie did, the one, if you look on the back, that does not have Michael Jackson's co-production credit,
Oh
that's
yeah.
how you can find it.
That's the one I got, baby.
That's the
The
one you
original.
want, right?
Yeah.
Because it hits, it kicks, and it's amazing dance record. Quincy Jones, one of his many triumphs as a producer.
Yep.
And anyway, so you fast forward to this Mobile Fidelity thing, because that's an ambitious project, taking on one of the biggest albums of all time. And for all indications, it sounds very good, but it's very clean sounding from everyone that I heard. So then I was okay. Again, going back to the price point, am I going to drop $100 on a title that I have several copies of already that I think sound terrific?
Yep.
arguably top copy already. If I was a huge Michael Jackson fan, maybe it makes sense. If I was a huge dance record person, maybe it makes sense. But it's almost too sterile from what I was hearing a lot of the feedback. So now if the title went to a more reasonable price on sale, like I know Plaid Room had too many of them and knocked it down to like $79 for a morbid curiosity, sure. But again, once you're in those triple digit price points right out the gate, you want to make sure that you're spending your money wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've even seen some for sale. The prices really come down. So maybe word got out, and it's the kind of thing where, people are like, nah, really? I mean, on a record that's already so plentiful, and even original copies aren't difficult to find. So it's like, yeah, it's
Well,
got to be.
and sign up before we cut this topic off. You're hearing a lot of that static too now with the UHQR pretzel logic, because there's a lot of people who are saying that it's missing the top end. And I think Harry, who was here in the gallery for a minute, Harry even talked about his review. And, he was basically saying, okay, you can still get an original, which sounds really great for $30 ballpark, or now $150 for one that sounds like maybe they've tapped it down a little bit and it's a little light on the high end and the top end. I mean, you're talking, $70, $80 difference, like we said in the open.
Yeah.
It's a tough one to swallow for a, big difference like that.
It's really like, do you have something to add by reissuing a record, or are you just trying to put one out to like make some money? Kind of the bottom line. It's like, look, if you have something to add, sure. I'm sure your opinion of, and we never even got to Love Supreme, and I know you talked about it in your stream and stuff, but I know it's kind of the hot topic right now in terms of UHQRs go and stuff, and that's probably a perfect example. That record has been released so many times. My pressing is a Japanese pressing. I love it. I'm fine with it, but yeah, it's kind of trying to chase that perfect version of it.
Right. Like how good is good enough? And I think that's. Yep. I mean, I appreciate the ambition, and I appreciate the idea of never settling. But Chad, they just released a 33 less than 2 years ago. That's a very nice copy. Nice copy. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool stuff. So I know we went over. I don't know. We got two other topics. We had the Goldmine Standard topic, and then we got the hype. Show off maybe some hype stickers. Full disclosure, I went through a bunch of records. I wasn't going to dig through everything to try to find hype stickers. So for me, I have a bunch of records that have some cool OB strips. I thought, man, maybe I'll show some of those off if you have hypes that you want to show off and stuff. We could jump into this Goldmine thing a little bit. I think it's this is one of those topics that's so, gosh, I don't know. It's very difficult. Even when I start like trying to bullet point, okay, what is the topic? What is the standard? I think we all understand. We could define that. You can look it up anywhere.
Yes.
Is what's challenging about the grading, and how do you can you improve on it? And every time I start to think about this, I'm like, well, the standard itself, maybe it's inherent sort of in what we're grading. We're grading something that is really two things: a physical entity and something that you listen to that, let's say a record from any time, but say from the 50s or 60s that got played to death with a bad stylus and yet was kept clean. And so you look at that thing like, oh my gosh, here's this, record, it's near minutes, VG plus, whatever, and you get it and you listen to it and it's destroyed and you're never going to get it back. And so it's just such a complicated thing. For me, though, and again, I want to give you a chance to jump in, but just kind of like, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this one, but I think for me, it's more a case of buying and selling and how people are interpreting the standard. And, we've all been there in the sense, and buyers and sellers both. We've all, I'm sure, had our share of both sides of it. And I think it's just, when you're buying a record, you appreciate if someone is maybe a little bit more on the conservative side rather than on, man, I think I can push this to a BG plus and get a little more money, because look, someone that's discerning and cares is going to know the difference. They're going to be unhappy. You're going to get returns. I recently had to return a record and the person was like, I can't keep doing this. Well, if you're making that statement, it's time to reevaluate your grading process,
Yeah.
Don't blame your customers, I think, is someone maybe on the occasion trying to get over on you, and be like, oh, but I don't think so. And most people are just want to They want a fair price for the condition that's stated, and that's it. So if that means being a little bit more conservative and maybe occasionally leaving a little money on the table because someone got a near mint, I say, I don't know. I'm not a full-time seller. I get it. I know it's a tough gig, but that would be my big takeaway, I think, for that.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, can you flash up Harry's last comment there? Because Harry sells a lot of records, and I think this is, if you're selling records, I think there is a certain responsibility that comes to that about exactly what you said, Jason, about undergrading something. Like err on the side of caution. No, he had one about best thing a seller can do. I think it's, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
so
there it is. Yeah, it's up.
this, exactly to your point is that if there's any doubt, undergrade,
Right.
because you'd
Yep.
rather, under promise, over deliver, that old adage. But
Yep.
one thing that's real important, and I remember you told the story last time we streamed together about that record and your troubles with that seller. One thing that I think that in the hobby would be really great to implement in some degree, and we can talk about goldmine here in a second, but the difference between listen, what's the word I'm looking for? Visual grading, like visual, like looking at it, and then audio grading, right? And even if there was just some kind of like 2-letter terminology, because I find when sellers disclose, yes, I've already play tested this.
Yep.
Then I feel better about it. And again, we can talk about their listening. Did they just put it on the store while they're doing other stuff? There's a whole variance to that too. But if I'm paying a decent amount of money on a used record, I'd like to know that it is the real deal, because there's been times I've gotten records that look exactly to your point, looks great, shiny, great luster, but looks fantastic. And then I put on my turntable, and guess what? Pacific Ocean waves coming at you. You know what I mean? So that tells me clearly not play tested. And you don't have to play the whole thing, but just sample a nugget of it to be able to say, yes, it's a flat record, or it's got a little bit of movement to it, or sounds good, or, again, looks great. Then you put it on and you get the popcorn and crackle. It's like, how is this possible? Because it could have been sealed for 30 years. I mean, there's a lot of variability with that too. So to me, that's something that I don't think gets talked about enough, particularly in the buyer seller realm, particularly the seller end, is that, has this been play tested, or is it just a visual grade? And then you can start kind of asking the right type of questions as you're kind of beginning that kind of commercial discussion about should I or shouldn't I buy it.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I mean, yeah. Just put it. My thing too is that, like, if you're willing to put, if you're going to say something like, especially on an expensive record, if you're willing to stand behind the fact that you're calling it a VG plus or a near mint, then do a little extra work, to your point, right? Like, don't just visually grade it and stuff, So anyway, I don't know if you want to, maybe you have some comments on the goldmine grading standard itself.
Well, it's kind of like we said in the open, is that, I mean, getting a large swath of people in any kind of collecting environment, comics, cards, whatever, they're very subjective to a certain extent. I will say the goldmine standard is a good baseline, because most people, if you say, oh yeah, VG plus, people generally know what that means. Now, a VG plus to a guy in Alaska could mean a lot different thing to a VG plus to a girl in Florida. You know what I mean? But
Right.
at least there's that starting point, and you even see it too if you look at the variability of, again, typical goldmine, mint, near mint, VG plus, VG, G plus. People now have nuanced it that if you look at different websites, some people call it excellent. So apparently excellent is either VG plus to some, or it's above, it's near mint, excellent, VG plus. So even those rules are kind of being bended. And then my favorite, and hopefully you've experienced this too. Yeah, we can talk about slab records.
I'll say, hey, Harry's a man after my own heart now. Slab records.
Oh yeah. Harry's on it, man. But now, you'll hear, and even friends of mine do this. I mean, I'm not trying to, rain on their parade. VG plus plus, or then they add VG minus. You know what I mean? So you take something that is, for lack of a better word, industry standard in goldmine, at least as a baseline,
right?
And then now they've added their own new. There you go, VG plus.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we already have 10 grades. It's like, why do we need 11?
Or right. It's like, is there something better than mint, like newborn baby? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's never going to be perfect. It's always going to, there's too many people, it's like, and there's too many kinds of sellers, right? It's like, if someone you can trust, you've purchased from them before, they're always grading conservatively. It's like, okay, you know what to expect. But oftentimes, you're on eBay or even on Discogs, and it could be just somebody unloading a bunch of records. It could be somebody that went to a thrift store, found a stack of records, and they're like, oh yeah, this looks blah. And then, you're always going to have that to deal with. So, all right. Thanks for all the input, everyone. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely, Harry.
Harry, Mint Plus. I mean, that's the next standard. Like, what is Mint Plus? I mean, listen, I've been to record shows, and that's where the real Wild Wild West happens, because there's the guys who have their premium records set behind the table, so you just have to look at their like collapsible wall and try to guess. And sometimes they'll have the grading written on there, like Amoeba writes on the sleeve, and other times like if you want to ask and look at it, and you pull it down, oh, VG Plus, because I think, and Jason, tell me if you look at this the same way, like VG Plus is pretty much the standard of where you want to be buying used records, right? Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's like ideal. If it's like a hard to find record or very old record, okay, and like you said, you've seen things graded VG or G Plus that look beat to hell. You put them on the turntable, and you would know, because they were just the good old days. They were made a lot different back then. They're like tanks, right? But
Yep.
then you conversely get some of those Dynaflex from the late 70s, early 80s that look sterling, like, wow. I mean, the shine, you can see your reflection in them, and you put them on and they're just the worst and very frustrating. Anyway, but yeah, the record shows are the best because you think, oh, it's a VG Plus, pulls it off the wall, you pull it out. You should always look at your records, people, before you buy them. And you look at it and you're like, I mean, literally, it looks like Swiss, like the label's torn up. There's writing, there's all these, and that's another thing that never gets talked about enough to me, is how they align on if a sleeve has a seam split, or
Yep.
if there's a record that has WOL writing on the label. Because a lot of DJs would write their names on their records, literally their records, and when they take them to clubs and gigs and stuff. I've bought VG Plus records online from Discogs, eBay, etc. And guess what? I open them up. There's somebody, Samantha or whatever. It's like on the label, staring right at me. It's like, okay, cool. I'm glad I got Samantha's record, but
and they're selling it at a collectible price. I mean, it's one thing if it's
that's
like,
my point. Yeah,
just
yeah.
hit me
Like
with a listener price. Don't hit me with the collectible price, man.
for sure.
Adam brings up a great point too, and this irritates me to no end. And I think you mentioned Amoeba too, and I wonder if I'm trying to remember. I was in California recently, and I bought from both Amoeba and Rasputin's. But anyway, I was in Arizona at a cool record shop one time, traveling there, and everything was sealed with a sticker on the front or whatever telling you what grade it is. Like, I don't want someone telling. I don't want. First of all, I want to be able to look at a used record. If I'm in a store, I want to hold it. I want to look at it in the light, like all that stuff.
That's part of, to me, that's the social contract of selling used records. Used records for a used record store are their highest margin return, right? Like you ask any record dealer. The least you can do is let me look at it myself before I'm going to plop down $50, $75, $100 or more, because if I buy a record and I look at it and I didn't see a warp, or you didn't disclose it, a little bit of shame on me. But like you're saying, like they won't even let you look at it. Like Amoeba's a perfect example. They're high dollar stuff. They got to pull it off the wall. Then you got to go up there. Then they got to open it for you. Like, come on. At least they let you look at it. But the process is very, is almost a deterrent within itself.
Absolutely. It's a deterrent for me because I don't want to have to go through all that. And it's like, what are you protecting your records from? Like, is it the 1 in 1,000 times or even less where, I don't know, does someone take it out and drop it? I mean, what are you afraid of? Like, why is it, are they switching records and sleeves? I don't know. Maybe they have a problem with that. I guess if that was a huge hit to your bottom line, then fine. But otherwise, let people look at the records.
Can I tell a side story real quick? It's funny you said that about switching records. I mean, I'm going to tell on myself. Back in the early days when I was collecting, like if I was at a thrift store or if I was at a record shop digging in the bins on the bottoms, if I found two of the same, I'd Frankenstein them, right? Because you want the best record with the best sleeve.
Oh, that, okay.
So a friend of mine, I was selling records with at a show recently. He was telling me a story that he was almost blacklisted because he was in a local store and they had advertised the Bob Dylan Greatest Hits that comes with the Milton Glaser poster. You know, it's really neat, and underpriced it. Right, this is a record collector's dream. You know, usually that's like with the poster, varying degrees. Let's call it a $40 record or more, depending on condition. So they advertised it for like $19.99, well underpriced. So he went to look at it out. He pulled it out, went and bought it. Right. Well, apparently he came in to buy again, and they say, "Hey, we can't sell to you anymore." Well, we
Oh,
got you on
really?
camera switching records. He's like, "What are you talking
Oh.
about?" And so they thought, since he pulled everything out, including the poster, they thought he was switching records with another copy to get the poster at $19.99.
Okay.
So he went through this whole ordeal. And of course, you know, like networking, a lot of these store owners know each other. They had called each other and be like, "Hey, if you know this guy, don't sell to him." So that's how he, you know, he's like, how did they get blacklisted? He had to go back to their own Facebook post where they flipped the record and they showed it at $19.99. He had to come back into the store and say, "Hey, dummies, here it is." And they're like, "Oh, our bad."
Oh,
And so he's like, "Hey,
whoa.
can you unblacklist me in the community, because like literally I know these other stores. Can you tell them it's cool to sell to me?" They're gonna, "Oh yeah, our bad." I mean, unbelievable.
Are bad.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I think that, and again, I don't own a business, and I'm not, you know, in terms, I don't own a record store business, and I'm not, you know, wouldn't be interested in doing a brick and mortar ever, probably, you know, except in perfect, you know, perfect circumstances or whatever. But it's like, it kind of goes back to the whole grading thing. Is that like, if you're sort of leading with like trust issues, and that's where, you know, it's kind of like you're grading, you're not grading conservatively, you're grading aggressively, you're treating your customers as if everyone's a thief. It's like, come on, man, maybe get into a different business. But again, look, it's easy for me to say, right? I'm not in that situation. But
for sure.
well, so you want to show off some hype stickers?
Let's do it.
Let's do
And
it.
it's funny that you threw this question out at me at a very interesting time, because I've been, you know, hype stickers are cool. I've always thought they're interesting parts of the collectability of a record, but it wasn't something I really leaned on until probably the last year. And there's two channels in particular that have really, really been a good bad influence, and that's Mr. Hall of Fame Brandon, my good friend, and JC, the flip side with JC, who intentionally collect records with hype stickers, right? And so, you know, there's obviously how many of a record do you need, etc. So for whatever reason, my brain is now poisoned. So I was literally at a local shop last week, and I was just digging through the floor records just because I had some time to kill, and I found all these titles I already had, but these had hype stickers, and that's what I'll show here in a second. You want to kick it off?
Well, I can kick it off. Like I said, I don't. I'm cheating a little bit because in my mind I
All
thought
good.
like, oh, I have some cool hypes. Let's show these off. And as I'm digging through records, I'm like, okay, I
All right,
don't
well,
have.
I'll start it with a real hype,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we can go
Start it
back
up,
and
and I'll show some Obi strips.
well, so before I'll get into another thing I'm doing, and I don't know if you do this or anyone watching does this. This is how that my friend Brandon calls it, the addiction. This is the addiction, and we're the varying degrees of it. So now, like for example, so I just picked up the Vinyl Me Please reissue of Honky Chateau, Elton John. I think it's 50th anniversary. So, you know, Vinyl Me Please, all their titles come with their own hype sticker. So don't
Yep.
make fun of me, but I've gotten in the practice of pulling the hype sticker off the shrink when I re-sleeve my records with the Vinyl Storage Solution sleeves,
Uh huh.
and I slap them on my own.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
So, I mean,
Well,
nerdzilla.
so see, this is great, man. Because in fact, I was even going to do a whole video on like hype stickers and shrink wrap and stuff. Because there are so many different ways to go with it. Sometimes I'll take the shrink off. I'll try to preserve it. I'll fold it up and stick it
Sure,
in a gatefold or something, you know. And
exactly.
yeah, so
Especially on
you know what?
on
Since
the
you're on
newer
that note,
records too.
since you're on that note, let me just show this one. So here's an example, and in fact, what I kind of want, and maybe I won't give, I don't want to give it away. I might still do a stream on it, but it's kind of like, or a video on it. But what about stuff like this? Is that a hype sticker worth keeping on, right? So this is the Blue Note Classic Vinyl
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Series.
yeah, yeah. Which is a standard sticker
It's
on
a
those
standard
titles. Yeah.
sticker. You know, they all come with it. Like, is
But
that
it makes it
something?
look cooler, Jason. It just does. I got to be honest. It makes it look sexier.
But then I'm like, does it though? Because people know, like, oh, he's got the $20 reissue. So like, hey, take the sticker off, throw it up on the back wall, and be like, hey, man, who knows?
Hey, I got to be honest with you. So I ordered the entire Prestige series from Chad and Acoustic Sounds,
Uh-huh.
and every single one, sometimes the hype sticker wasn't as clean to come off, but all 50 of those titles, I used other Acoustic Sounds because again, they just used a standard sticker on other titles. All of them have the goofy Acoustic Sounds,
Yep.
hype sticker on there. I mean, that's the varying degrees of the sickness, the addiction that I've got.
So you will make sure you preserve all that stuff then.
If I can. I mean, some not all hype stickers are created equal, and
Right.
that even applies to the way some are easier to extract than others. Like if I can't pull it off clean, it's got to be a real cool one for me to just cut it out and keep it on the plastic if I can't extract it. But even stuff like like a record that's not even like this Flotsam and Jetsam record from, this is like metal from the 80s. This is the band Jason Newsted was in before he joined Metallica.
That's very
Like,
cool.
like already a cool record, already not an easy one to find, cool art, etc. But I mean, come on. This hype
Yep.
sticker, just calling out, oh hey, by the way, our guy in this band left now with Metallica as a selling point. A plus, love it. They're just like, hey, this is the band that guy used to be in. Buy this. This is his
Yeah.
last recording with it. Up
How
and
bad can it be?
yeah, exactly. But
Well,
even
so
things
let me
like
on that note, and that's a perfect example, man. Is that like can a hype sticker? And I mean, I think I don't know the answer, but it'd be interesting. It depends on the record, but add a premium to the record. Like, could you say like, look, man, with hype, and what kind of premium do you think something like that would bring?
I mean, it makes it cooler, and to me, I don't know if you can quantify it in would I pay $20 more because some people you've seen the listings online, eBay, Discogs,
Sure.
etc. That'll say you'll have two copies, priced about the same, and if you can get one that says in shrink with hype or not, sometimes that's a point of delineation. You're like, okay, I'll pay the extra $5 from
Yep.
that seller, or he's charging more for shipping. I'll pay that because the idea, the perceived value is that's a better return, right? But even things like, so these are some of the records I picked up last week at that shop I was telling you about. I already
Oh, that's
have two or three
cool.
copies of Billy Joel the Stranger, but I mean the hype sticker is cool. You even have the old price. I always think these are kind of this nuance. The old price stickers from the
Yep.
stores that are
Yep.
like here from Music Land, long ago deceased record store. You know what
That's
I mean?
so
But
cool.
those
Yeah,
things
it's
are
a,
just
it's
like
it's a piece of history. Why would you
it's
remove
like a
that?
moment in time, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure you've seen the ones from like the real famous record stores like Peaches or Sam Goody or Tower. Like
Yep.
those are just add to the patina of
Yeah.
these pieces, presentation of the collectability of them.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and two, it's like I wonder if, and part of the reason I asked about the premium thing is because with obi strips, Japanese records, it really does add to the value sometimes. You'll notice like if like I buy a lot of records from Tokyo Mion Records,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll notice it's noticeably different when they like. So here's a Quiet Riot Metal Health record with a really cool, and some of these are a work of art in themselves, and
Yeah, for sure.
similarly to like the hype stickers, and it really does add a layer of coolness and just history, but also just how fragile they are in their context, because how many people actually saved that stuff? Most people are just, yeah, exactly. And so for this stuff to actually survive, yeah, it is cool, man. There's definitely an additional cool factor to it. And sounds like I bet you there's, and I'm thinking to myself now, like, since I've been buying a lot of Japanese, I'm kind of like, yeah, I always try to get the Obies now. I imagine hypes are the same way, right? You see one with a hype, it's like, okay, boom.
Well, like Harry even said, like sometimes that's more appealing than because a lot of the titles, like some of those hype stickers, are not originals, right? They're because it's an early repress of they've got all the hits. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
Billy
yeah.
Joel, here's all the hits from this album, right? So then it becomes a second copy versus keep copy and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you're wanting to in the different stages of collecting, I mean, everyone can agree or disagree on those, but yeah, if again, it goes back to if you can have it versus it doesn't come with it and they're really comparable. I mean, why not? Why
Why
wouldn't you
not?
want more for your money?
Yeah, exactly. Just checking out some of these comments.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree too. Like I keep, especially with like the newer ones, like I showed, the newer generic style of hype. Like I've been keeping them, but I'm sort of like in my mind, like really, like it doesn't add anything, and stuff. But on the originals, I think it's cool. Like it does kind of cover the art to some degree, especially with the Obi strips covers a lot of the cover, and so it kind of depends. It depends on the record. Some of them are cooler than others. Um, and then
Yeah,
Heavy
I mean, not to
Sand.
get it twisted. Like I wasn't going to pay $20 for that Billy Joel record. That was like a $7.99 record,
But,
right? So
but
I'm
is
like,
there
oh,
a record that you would? Do you have the Journey Escape? Was it Escape that you had that you did? Do you
yeah,
have it
that was
handy?
one. Yeah, I didn't even have, and I'm telling on myself, I didn't have that in my collection to begin with. But I knew that was a record that right time, right place, right price. I
Yeah.
would have picked it up. But Permanent Records, a shop in LA, who has they do a really good job of selling through their Instagram account, Permanent Records LA. Yeah, they had it, and it was like, okay, $15, $20 shipped. Yeah, in shrink with hype. I mean, it just made it cool. Like, okay, that's the copy I'm going to get, and I don't
Yeah.
mind throwing $20 shipped to get it. Again, it was the perfect storm of needed it, wasn't actively looking for it or aggressive about it, but in that condition, I had never seen one with a hype come to Papa.
Yeah, exactly. That would be my style. On that journey, I would love to have the hypes on those.
I mean, think about, similarly like sealed records, right? Like if it's something like I've told the story in different places, but one of the records I have the most copies of is Huey Lewis and the New Sports. Having their 40th anniversary this year, I did buy the 40th anniversary pool table green variant, right? But one of the copies I picked up that I didn't have to have, but it was in shrink with the big fatty hype sticker on it
Uh huh.
was right there. Okay, that's usually a $10-15 record. It was $20, but I'm like, I don't have a sealed one, and I don't have it with that big fatty daddy hype. So
That's
I'm home.
cool. That's super cool, man. Um,
See here, yeah, someone after my own heart, peeling off the hype stickers, and that's only something I've started doing in the last call it 18 months.
so you actually peel it? Do you cut it around it, or do you peel it off?
So it really depends. Like, and I think this is a little bit of my 1% OCD I probably have in my system that
Only
I'll
one
start.
percent.
Well, I need to get tested. I need to get tested for a lot of things, but OCD is probably one of them. But no, if I am able to, at least present day, if I get a brand new record or a long sealed one or whatever, if I can start to peel it and it starts coming off clean, then I'll try to remove it, and then I'll try to do when I re-sleeve it. If
Gotcha.
I start peeling it and it's just not working, it'll really depend on how far I am in the peel process, if I want to cut and save it, and how cool it is. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
if it was like a first pressing of Metallica Kill 'Em All, I don't have it, but I'm just making it up, that had a hype sticker. I don't know if I couldn't get that early peel to work for me, I wouldn't want to mess that up, because that is like cooler than cool, right? So
Oh,
yeah,
this
in
is
that
gold.
instance, yeah, I have a couple records where I've literally cut off the hype still with the shrink behind it, just because I don't want to throw that away. Like that is like
Yeah.
something you just don't see anywhere else.
Well, so let me ask you this, because now you're making me think. So, are you someone that will? Are you always? What am I trying to? How much do I want to frame this?
I'm always this good looking,
Is it
Jason. Yes, I know what you mean.
okay? All right. Next question. No, but so are you always like you prefer your records without the original shrink on them? Is that why you do that? Does that make sense?
Oh, well, so as part of like my whole moving thing I got going on, like I ideally, like if it's a gatefold, I look at a whole bunch of different ways. If it's a gatefold, like I'll generally remove it from the shrink just because I want to look at that at some point, because the gatefold arc is pretty cool generally. But if it's a record, like if it's a single sleeve, like I just opened Miley Cyrus. So Miley Cyrus Bangers has a 10-year anniversary coming up. They're reissuing it here in the next month or two. I have an original from Record Store Day years ago. It's like a $300 record now. I never opened it, but I'm moving, and I would hate for in the move to get a seam split or something stupid like that. So I opened it, had a hype sticker. I think that's a gatefold, but I just decided to leave it in a shrink. I just opened it up, took it, cleaned it, vinyl storage solution sleeve. So I hate to say case by case, but it really is. I don't have like a all gatefolds are removed from the shrink. It really just depends. Some shrink, and again, this sounds stupid. Some shrink, not all shrink is created equal, and
Mm-hmm.
some of it, even stuff, records still in shrink from 20, 30 years ago, you can see the holes. There's perforation in there just from being taut and tight. And
Yeah.
and one thing I've noticed too, and you've probably noticed it, I know some people in the gallery probably have seen it. Some of these long sealed records, I mean, they've been sealed for 30, 40 years. that pressure on some of them starts to bow the actual sleeve, right? Especially at the mouth opening. So I've been picking up a lot of Columbia House records from the late 80s, early 90s, like country titles that were only available on vinyl through Columbia House.
I mean, he can't see me right now,
No,
but
no,
I'm wearing the.
I know you have the Columbia House sweatshirt, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, perfect timing. But like I've been picking up a lot of George Strait titles, and those, for whatever reason, the shrink that they use to make those have over time started to like, basically put like a fat lip on the sleeve. So when I'm picking these up, I'm straight up opening those. I'm saving their lives. I'm like the Baywatch of vinyl collecting
Yep.
because I don't want them to warp, because if that's happening
Right.
to the sleeve, eventually that's going to do something to compromise the vinyl inside. So anyway, it's
Yep.
a sickness. It really is.
That's why I said 1% OCD. Um, let's see. Da, da, da. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, they're super cool. I mean,
Well,
it's
and
almost
Harry
like
had
when
a
I
good
when I
point too. Harry was talking about he's bought records, Japanese records that didn't have the obi on the outside, but
right.
then he opened them up and the obi was stuck on the inside. You know what I mean? So always
Oh,
look. Again, super important.
That's
Use
a
records
great
cleaned
point.
up.
I was just gonna make the comment that like, cause I have a lot of Japanese records, and so when I don't get the O, because I'm kind of like, what, do I need the OB? Like, let's be realistic. I try to like, I have that little internal battle with myself. I am always disappointed when I don't get it though. I'm like, this one doesn't have the OB, man. And also like the really cool booklets sometimes on the Japanese records. The inner sleeves are very cool. Sometimes they'll have, like, I have a Beatles record that has an inner sleeve with the lyric sheet in both Japanese and English, and
Cool.
it's just cool, some of that stuff. It's a whole nother layer. In fact, I used to so like I just got this record. I love this, by the way, man. Killing Joke. I know I get a lot of glare there, but this is a fantastic '80s album, man.
Cool.
It's quickly becoming one of my favorite. But when I started doing, I'd always have the album on the back showing the label. And then somebody sent me a record. I think it was Meon, and the inner sleeve was on here, and the record was
Sure.
tucked between. And I was like, that's how I'm going to start doing it, because then you get kind of like, you get to
Best
look
of
at the
both
end.
worlds.
Yeah, you get the best of both worlds. Otherwise, you're never able to see that stuff. But um, everyone loves this discussion. Thanks, guys. I didn't know this was going to be the one that got everybody going. I do
We
love
did it.
deal.
We did it, Jason. We
Fine.
finally.
Finally. Do love old price stickers. Yeah, old price stickers are cool too. And Chance, you showed some of those, man. And it is fun when you see some. I have an original Kiss, their first album, their debut album,
Oh, self-titled, yeah.
self-titled. It's an original with a $1 sticker right on Ace Frehley's forehead, and that
Amazing.
says grocery. And I'm like, bro, how can I take this off? And it's right on the cover. It's not on the shrink. It's on the cover. And I'm like, I don't care.
Ah,
It's so cool.
neat.
I remember the days when you would walk into a grocery store and just like racks of comic books, racks of records, you would see
Dime
all that
stores,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. Always look inside. Yeah, we talked about that. Thank you for bringing that up. For whatever reason, I never really thought about that. I'm going to go through all my Japanese records that I don't think have obies and see if they do.
Oh man, you might have some surprises in store. All thanks to Harry. Good call,
Yeah,
Harry.
totally, man. That'll be cool. Yep, save the hype sticker for something special. And some of those are really cool, man. Like the Thriller album has a cool little hype sticker on it. Mine doesn't have a hype, but and someone earlier, sorry, I don't remember who it was, but mentioned that like some albums get a variety of hype stickers on them. The same release might get different hype sticker, or maybe releases close together will have different hype stickers on them.
Yeah, that's deep digging. If I'm getting like the 14 different hype stickers, like how would you even be able to chart that? Oh yeah, Billy Joel the Stranger had 7 different hype stickers. Like you got to be a big William Joel fan to be hunting down those 7 titles, the 7 copies with the 7 different hype stickers. That's impressive.
I mean, eventually, maybe that's how it's like you have everything else. It's like, you know what? Let's start going
It
for all the
could.
hypes.
It could. At some point, you're like, what else is there to do? Well, oh, wait. Somebody, all it takes is seeing somebody on a YouTube video doing it, and you're like, I never thought of that. Now I want it.
Yep. Yeah, the last word, it gets cut off. Sorry, Adam, but he says unplayable. So, yeah, problem with Old Sealed is if you don't know that it's warped, several Old Seals that he grabbed were unplayable.
It's funny. It's funny Adam brings that up because I I've had a couple of really old sealed records I've picked up lately, and I sold one off because I knew it was worth more sealed than opening up and finding out it was warped. Because sometimes, unfortunately, that pressure doesn't happen all the time,
Yep.
but you're betting against the unknown in that case. And it was a Beatles like German Horzu of, I think, Sgt. Pepper's. Harry, I think, even gave me advice to sell it, and I did, and I made a nice return on it. So Harry, checks in the mail on that one. But the truth is like I could open this and it doesn't mean as much to me as selling it for the return, obviously, but also there's a Beatles fan out there that is super excited to get this sealed 40 plus year old sealed record and be the first listen. There is something gratifying about being the first. Like you're going to laugh at me, Jason, but I got this one from High Voltage in Tacoma, MC Hammer's first record, sealed.
Yeah, baby.
Been on my want list. Been on my want list for 6 years, and the timing was right, and they popped it up in their used and came home. But I opened it. I mean, it was sealed, but I opened it and processed it, and did not come with a hype sticker, unfortunately. But I mean, look at that jacket, like that bomber jacket. I mean, come on,
love it.
Sunglasses.
I love it.
I mean, you might have better sunglasses than you, Jason. I hate to say it, but I mean, look at those things. I mean, styling and profiling.
That's awesome, dude. I had a couple records that came sealed too, and I opened them up, and they were older, like 80s, and they were fine, fortunately. But yeah, I know that can be an issue, man.
It's a roll of the dice. It really is.
Remember the Columbia House titles were super thin. Yeah, but the thing is too is that I have had club albums that sounded really good. In fact, I used to have an original. I mean, I have the original Live Dead, Grateful Dead double LP, but I used to have the club edition as well. Now I have I think a first and a second, and I just kind of wanted to put them on together and just see how they sounded. And the difference between, as you might expect, the difference between a first pressing and the club was really just that little extra punchiness. And I know everyone uses the same word. If you know, you know. It's just there's that little extra kick in the sound.
That extra muscle. That's why I call it the extra muscle.
Yeah, there you go. A little extra flex. And the only reason I knew it was because I played them back to back. Otherwise, the club was very good. But yeah, they're super thin. Some of those are really thin. Yeah, and easy to warp. Yeah, that's probably the bigger issue. Yep.
Faux show.
Original. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Where's it from, Chris?
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry. Now I'm showing comments that aren't really meant for us, but all right. So we got through those.
Are we giving something away? I think you're doing a redo of the giveaway, right?
I was saying, how many more times am I going to put this off, man? It's like we tried to give them away once.
Like the OJs, give the people what they want. Come on now.
Give the people what they want. Again, I can't even think about this or do this without really appreciating the first two winners being so cool about this. And, one of them got their recently received, and just was able to direct ship the John Coltrane to them. They emailed me back. They freaking love it. So whoever gets the Coltrane tonight is in for a treat. I haven't heard it. I didn't want to open it up and listen to it. It's sealed. So whoever gets this is going to be the first owner. And so I hope you love it. Awesome. And in fact, we're even going to be able to show this on screen unless we have another bug show up. But I think we're good. Let me just prep these quickly. And the way we'll go in order, we'll do Coltrane first. And I know not everybody's here, and I put in, I don't know if you guys saw my post, but you don't have to be here to win or anything, but it's kind of cool if you are. So we'll start with Coltrane, we'll go with Dead, and then last, everyone who doesn't win, besides the two people that win these two records, are going to go into the other drawing, the third drawing, which is for the Sun Ra album that I showed in another video. So if you saw that video, you know what I'm talking about. I wish I had the albums here to show you, but they're literally... They look like this. They're boxed up. They're ready to go.
Man, you're going right to the PO tomorrow, huh? First thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Nothing worse than winning something and having to wait.
Tell me about
it. Uh-oh, sounds personal. Can you guys see this?
Oh, hey, God, Jason, I think you actually just came back into view on my display. Yes, there you are again. You've made it. Your return, yes.
All right. We should have just been on the screen the whole time. Oh man, you've been so patient, dude. Chance, by the way, I just have to tell people, and everyone knows already. Everyone loves Chance, and
Oh,
but
not everyone, Jason. There are a couple people.
hey, you know what?
There are a couple of trolls out there that don't like the concert buddy.
How is that? But you send them my way. I'll talk to him. But Chance has really been patient with me, guys. Man, it's like this has been my first time around doing this. This is second stream. I know. I don't want to embarrass him, but he jumps on early. He helps me work out the kinks. I just want to thank you publicly, man. I really appreciate it.
Happy to do it, my friend.
All right, there we go. This is for Coltrane. Those are the names. These are everybody that left a comment with Coltrane in the way you're getting, the way your name ended up on here is that you responded with a comment to the video that I asked you to and entered Coltrane. And so here we are. Woo! Let's count it down, man. 3, 2, 1. Dun, 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 dun. There's the spin. Oh God, it's close. It's close. Commodore Runner. I don't think Commodore Runner's here, so it feels a little bit anticlimactic.
On behalf of Commodore Runner, I'd like to thank you, Jason, for offering me this opportunity to win this Coltrane album. I'm going to put it to good use. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. The least you could do is show up to my stream. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry, bro. I had a kidney removed. I couldn't watch it. Wi-Fi was terrible in the hospital.
All right. You're off the hook. All right. Sorry to everyone else. That's the thing about these things, man, is that like there's one winner and there's a lot of people that don't get it.
Hey, I will say this. I think Rod is in the gallery, the Happy Hippie Vinyl guy. He won. I think he came in, I forget, maybe third in the contest I ran in the fall. So there's nothing better than giving out these prizes to like cool people. I mean, that's the best part, especially people who like will tell you like, thank you, and this is so awesome. And Rod made a video. There's like a record he wanted to get from Amazon. I think he got an Amazon gift card, and then he made a video. And it's not about the thanks. It's just knowing that it went to the right place, and that it's just good vibes, man. That's the thing. The community should really be more on the up and up, because sometimes obviously human nature gets involved. It's just doing good things for good people, man. Nothing better.
100%, you're right, and hopefully it doesn't sound like lip service. I know it's not coming from you, and I feel the same exact way, man. It is a great feeling, and it really is. Being part of a community means like this reciprocal relationship, and it's never lost on me when people have nice things to say, man. It's I can't imagine. Anyway, I don't want to go on and start.
No, it's a whole nother show, but the long and the short of it costs nothing to be kind, right?
Absolutely.
It's free.
100%. All right. This is for the Grateful Dead. Man.
Well, I have a personal interest in this one. Let's go.
Woo, yes, you are eligible, Chance, on this one. So let's click the button. Let's see who wins this, man. I'm super excited to make someone's day. Here we go.
Rod, I'm sorry for about 5 seconds. I can't like you. Here it goes.
Oh, God. Adam Hunt, 4462.
Nice. Congrats.
That was a close one, man. That was really
I almost did it. I saw it slowing down. I'm like, oh, daddy. Let's go. And then,
yeah, that's one of the, I know. That's the trouble with these ones. You can actually see it happening in real time.
Where's that cutting object? I need to stab myself in the heart.
I know. I'm so sorry. Look, I wish I had something for everyone. I really do. And it's like, well, and same with you, Chance. It's like, I know we've been sitting here streaming, and at the bottom of the screen, we show the promo codes and stuff. Is that, that is something that we can try to give to everyone, is to at least offer something. I can't give away 1,000 records, but I can give away a couple, and then
yeah, for sure. Like the vinyl storage solution thing, not to like pimp it on anybody, but I did the video with Jeremy Edgar, and we had a really good conversation. And one of the things I asked him afterwards was like, hey, would you guys be willing to like give my listeners or viewers like a discount to sample the product? He's like, oh, absolutely. And so we worked something out, and then that went pretty well. And then they reached out to me like, hey, we can keep this going. Let's just, give you a different code. And it extends the good vibes. And then like, it's called like an affiliate link. So essentially if anybody buys anything, tries out those sleeves, then I get like, I don't know, like credits. And so I get sleeves out of it too. So it's like a win-win. So, I mean, I would never, and we talked about this before, I would never like endorse anything I didn't use myself, and those are my go-to sleeves. So it's like it's a win-win all the way around.
Yep. Yep, 100%. All right, so this is for the Sun Ra record, and I want to apologize. I don't have it handy, but this is kind of a complimentary
Oh, this is
prize here.
everybody. Oh, I got one more shot at this. Yes, let's go.
You got one more shot. So everyone else that didn't win, here we go. Chance at Sun Ra. By the way, if you're not familiar with Sun Ra, a lot of people aren't, man. He's one of those guys. Well, let's not spoil this.
He's a record you want to have. That's
Triple E 76. Congratulations,
Hey.
you got Sun Ra.
Rod, you're like 2 away. You almost won that one, pal. Man.
Is anybody who won here? Oh well. It's all good. It's all good. Just all right. Well, congratulations, everybody who's not here. And but you won some fantastic records. Everyone else, don't be sad. I know you're all jumping off the stream. It's fine. We're gonna continue to do this though. So don't be discouraged. Yeah, I know everyone knows that gets the deal, but yeah, we had some winners. We gave away these records finally, and I'm gonna keep spreading the love. I have another one that I showed, the Led Zeppelin. I know there's only like probably 5 other people on here besides me and Chance, but this is actually the next giveaway. This is courtesy of Meon Records with hype sticker. I think this is a 73, did I say, or a 76 Japanese pressing, which by all accounts has an incredible reputation. So someone's going to get another cool record once we draw for that. So, man, that's all I got. That's all I got, Chance.
Hey, that's all I got.
We made
tapping out.
We got through another stream, baby. I appreciate you joining me, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me as always, Jason. Happy to do it, my friend.
And to everyone else. So Adam Hunt, he's here. Great. Congratulations, man.
Hey, way to go.
Okay. That's all I got. Everyone, thanks for joining. And Chance, thanks for joining. I don't know how to end this any better than to just say, I'll see you next time.